Hello, and welcome once again to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto, attorney at law in the state of Michigan. I've been practicing law for 25 years in the fields of consumer protection and lemon law. I often write about this stuff for places like roadandtrack.com and I've written a few books. Today I'm wearing my Untitled Car Show podcast t-shirt. I mentioned a while back, if anybody sends me a shirt that's not foul, I'll wear it and promote your thing. But I'm good friends with the guys at the Untitled Car Show. In fact, I've been on their show 3 or 4 times. They mentioned they had t-shirts. So those of you on the video, there's the shirt. On the audio, you have to imagine it's a black shirt with white writing that says Untitled Car Show on it. Today we're going to talk about when Carfax says you're driving a salvage vehicle. This topic comes up a lot, and I get these phone calls more often than I'd like to admit because it just shows you how out of control some of this stuff is getting. But there's variations on how these calls come in. I'll often get a call, for instance, where someone will say, Steve, I bought a brand new car. Brand new car. I am the original owner. I bought this car brand new, like 3 miles in the odometer, drove it for 3 years, went to trade it in. And the dealership says, well, we can't take it back from you because according to Carfax, this vehicle's been wrecked. And the client says, the vehicle's never been wrecked. I know because I've owned it my entire life. I'm the only driver. It's never been in an accident. You know, Carfax is wrong. I've also heard the one where someone says, I bought a car used. And when I bought it, seemed fine, drove fine, regular title. I drive it for 3 years, 4 years, whatever. I take it to trade it in, and the dealership says, oh, this vehicle is a rebuilt salvage vehicle. We can't take it at all. This thing's unsafe to drive, which we hear all the time. Or the other one is, bought a car, been driving it for a few years, went to trade it in, and according to Carfax, Carfax says the odometer was spun 6 months ago. There's a problem that occurs allegedly during my ownership of the car, and it's obviously a mistake. What do I do? So when Carfax tells you you're driving a salvage vehicle or that the odometer's been rolled back during your possession, those things happen. And some dealerships out there will literally just say, we cannot take your car under any circumstances. That car is dead to us. We can't touch it. And that's a problem. But these problems that pop up here fall into a couple different categories. And some of them you can fix, some of them you might not be able to fix. And so, you know, you hope it doesn't happen to you. But the ones that are easy to fix are these. So for instance, you say, I bought the car brand new. I owned it for 3 years. I went to trade it in and something's showing on Carfax that's not correct. Carfax has a process that you can contact them and say, look, there's a problem on the vehicle history report for my VIN. Can we go over this and figure this out? And there's a process whereby they do that, and I've heard from people who've actually done it, and I've actually corresponded with Carfax about this because I was curious, and they have ways of fixing this. And by the way, these problems could also occur with other titling history companies, not just Carfax. I mentioned Carfax because Carfax has become like the Kleenex or the Coke of the, the vehicle history world. So Carfax is shorthand for any of the companies that sell these vehicle history reports. But Carfax is the dominant player. So if there's a problem that you know is incorrect, you can contact Carfax and deal with them that way. So, you know, they say that, hey, your vehicle was in a major accident. Well, if you had it and it wasn't, if you contact Carfax and ask them to produce the evidence of it and they go back and look into it, hopefully they'll find out that, oh, it was a typographical error. And you have to imagine that typographical errors occur all the time in their world because they're dealing with 17-digit figures. The VIN, the vehicle identification number on a vehicle nowadays, modern ones, are 17 digits long. And one of the problems also is, I believe, that zeros and the letter O often get transposed, and probably also the number 1 and the letter L. But, you know, people dealing with these things over and over again, mistakes do get made. So you can contact Carfax and deal with it that way. But a bigger problem where you might not be able to fix it so simply is you bought a vehicle, and it has a clean title. And in Michigan, a clean, unencumbered, non-branded title is a green title. Green title. So you get a green title that says vehicle's fine. And the reason you think it's fine is that if it was a salvage vehicle or rebuilt salvage vehicle, sometimes they're different colors. And also they'll have the name stamped prominently on the face of the title to say salvage vehicle or rebuilt salvage vehicle. And I've discussed this before. Go through my YouTube video list. You'll find the videos in there or the audios in the podcast. about how rebuilt salvage does not mean the car is safe to drive. You do not ever want to buy a rebuilt salvage vehicle unless you're getting a gigantic discount on it. And by gigantic, I mean huge. So if you buy a rebuilt salvage vehicle knowingly, that's fine. But if you paid full price for your car and find out later it was rebuilt salvage, you got robbed, okay? So the question then becomes, is Carfax correct? Was this vehicle at one point in time rebuilt salvage? And if so, how did it get sold to you not as rebuilt salvage? So the way you have to figure that out is to get a title history to the car. And title histories are relatively easy to get, but there's some hoops you got to jump through, okay, to get to them. But I know this because I've done this many times. I've had cases before. I've told this story where I had a client who bought a car that was a one-owner vehicle. And when I ordered the certified title history through Lansing, it turned out to be like a 7-owner vehicle. And later, the attorney and the dealership guy tried to say in court that one-owner vehicle didn't actually mean anything. It was a term of art. And I said, yeah, it's a term of art for a car that's been owned one time. It's had one owner. That's why it says one owner, okay? And what's fascinating about that concept, whether that's a term of art or not, I've also had attorneys try to argue that numbers matching doesn't mean anything. Numbers matching, again, is a well-known term of art that means that the numbers of certain parts of the car match. And numbers are numbers. You know, 3 isn't basically 5, okay? 7 isn't 12, okay? 1 is 1. So one owner is a one-owner vehicle. It's in one owner. So in Michigan, here's how you do it. And if you're in another state, I suspect that there's a process similar to this. So you go on the old intranet and go to your state's website where they document titles and histories and things of that nature. And in Michigan, that's the Secretary of State's office. Ruth Johnson is the Secretary of State in Michigan, and she's the one who oversees the Department of State with respect to these things, and these things being title histories. So let's suppose you own a vehicle. You've been told the vehicle has a salvage history. And all you know is you bought it used 3 years ago. You go to the Secretary of State's website in Michigan, or the equivalent in your state, and in Michigan it's called a title lookup. Lookup being one word. Title lookup. L-O-O-K-U-P. Title lookup. And you can order a title history for your car, or for any car for that matter. But the big distinction is what they will give you. So if you have a legitimate purpose, they will give you the complete title history going back to the certificate of origin, assuming the car has spent its entire life in Michigan, with copies of the front and backs of every single title and title transfer going back to day one, which includes the name, addresses, and all the information that's on the titles of all the previous owners, along with the mileage information, okay? And remember, this is where Carfax gets its information from. They get it from the Secretary of State's office in each state. So in a perfect world, and in my example, I like to use perfect worlds once in a while, we'll say that this vehicle was delivered in Michigan, sold in Michigan, spent its entire life being titled and registered in Michigan. You can go to the title lookup section, Secretary of State's office, and it's going to cost you some money. So each title transaction requested is $11. Now don't let that fool you. It's not $11 for the whole title lookup. It's $11 per transaction. So the vehicle's been titled 3 times. It's going to be 33 bucks. You can do the math on that. It's just multiplying by 11. And if you want those to be certified, it's going to cost you a couple bucks more. You're going to want them certified if you're going to take it to court. And so, like, I'm an attorney. I order these things certified, and I get the certified records, and I take them to court. And the certified records can be admitted into evidence much easier than non-certified records. It's not important for our purposes. The Secretary of State's office in Michigan takes credit cards, and you can then order these things over the internet. You can call on the phone, or you can walk into a Secretary of State's office and place an order there if you don't like using the internet for these things. You should know, however, it's going to take some time. They don't do this overnight for you. They can do it faster, but there's then a charge for how fast you want them to do it, and they're going to charge you, as you might imagine, both an arm and a leg. But they do take Discover, Visa, or MasterCard, and so on, and they can order the histories for you. And then what you do is you're going to fill out a form and tell them what you want. Now, here's where it gets tricky. As you can imagine, in our day and age where privacy is such an important matter, they don't want you just to be able to pull the information on any vehicle and find out people's names and addresses and so on. Otherwise, if I was a stalker and I was fascinated by some young lady who parked her car across the street, I could walk over there one day when she's not around and get the VIN off of her car, submit it to the Secretary of State's office and go, I'm doing a title lookup, and I'd get her name, address, and all the other information about her car. So they will redact that information unless you've got a legitimate purpose to ask for it. And they actually give you a list of legitimate reasons that you might be looking for information. And this is important to know because if you get a title history for your vehicle and it says, it's all been redacted, but it says, 3 owners back, this thing was salvage, and then somehow it became non-salvage. The only way you're going to be able to figure that out, quite likely, is to go back and speak to these people and see if you can figure it out. Now, the person who unsalvaged the vehicle might not want to talk to you, but the person who wrecked it and created it into a salvage vehicle might want to talk to you about it. And I can tell you, I've made that phone call before, and I've also gone and knocked on doors and sent letters and so on. And I've actually found people who are happy to talk to me and say, yeah, by the way, I was in a car accident. I wrapped that car around a tree. That car should never be on the road again. Never. And I tell people, I say, well, somebody fixed it and sold it to my client and never disclosed the damage. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'd be happy to testify about that. I've also had it happen before where I call somebody and say, I'm an attorney, and they hang up on me. They don't even let me finish the sentence. I'm an attorney. Click. So you can get the information. You can do some research. But when they ask you for permissible purposes as to why you might be asking for this stuff, one of them is whether you're doing something in anticipation of litigation. And so that is actually something you might be anticipating if you are doing this because you've got a vehicle that was formerly salvaged but is no longer salvaged. So if you're doing it in that purpose, attorneys are also allowed to ask for the information, and they can clearly check one of these boxes and say they're doing it in anticipation of litigation. But when you go through these different reasons as to why you are looking for this information, you pick one of those reasons and fill it out. But you need to know that when you're filling the form out, you're actually going to sign a certification saying, I'm entitled to this information because of the reason I gave you, and then you give them the reason. And then you are going to notice that directly above your signature, it says that misuse of this document and making a false statement on it is a felony for which you could be imprisoned for 15 years or fined $20,000 or $15,000, which is a little extreme, it seems to me. But I'm just telling you that because I'm an attorney. So the information is out there. You can get it. Now, where it runs into a snag, as you might imagine, and this is where I see it more often than not, is you do the title history, and it comes back and it goes, only 2 records. There's you and the previous owner. And you get that previous owner's record, and you flip it over, and you see that the car came in from Wisconsin, or it came in from Kentucky, came in from some other state. So now that you've spent 3 or 4 weeks waiting for these 2 records to come in, you now go, oh, I've got to do the same thing in Kentucky. Got to do it in Wisconsin. And you got to do it in one of those states. And you're going to track this back and find out the true history of your vehicle. And if your vehicle was, in fact, a salvage vehicle, then you need to find out how it became unsalvaged. And then the question is whether you have any legal remedies to pursue. You might, because I've seen it before where someone takes a salvage vehicle from one state, does nothing to it. I mean, they fix it up and now it's rebuilt salvage or whatever, but they bring it to another state and somehow just simply get it titled as nothing. For some odd reason, some states don't pick up on the brands, I guess. And so once they have a clean title from one state, then they take it to Michigan and sell it, and there you go. So it was salvage, then rebuilt salvage, and now it's just a car again. And you'd like to know how that happened. Now, I know you're going to ask whether or not you have a legal remedy at this point. Can you go back and sue the person several links back in the chain? And of course you can, because you're a victim of probably fraud or misrepresentation, but it gets trickier if you're in Michigan and they're in Kentucky. And then there's also possible issues with statutes of limitation depending on when this happened. I've had someone call me up before and say, Steve, I bought a vehicle, worked flawlessly. I drove this vehicle for 8 years, and then I discovered that the odometer was spun back when I bought it 8 years ago. And I say, well, statute of limitations, and every civil remedy in this world has a statute of limitations, as do crimes, except for murder. And if you blow the statute of limitations, there's nothing you can do to revive it in most cases. So if you find this stuff out way too late, it might not help you. There's some arguments about whether or not something's been hidden from you and so on. But so one of the things I would ask you to do, though, is if someone tells you that your vehicle is rebuilt salvage, okay, that's what the paperwork shows somehow, and you can't find paperwork to confirm that. Take the vehicle to a certified master mechanic or a body shop and have them check it out and see if, in fact, it looks like it might be rebuilt salvage. So I've had people tell me both that they took the vehicle to an expert, and the expert looked at it and said, oh, yeah. Once you're underneath it, you can see where the frame's been straightened. You can see where this has been pushed around. This has been replaced. That's been welded, things like that. And I've had other people say they took it to a mechanic and said, no, this thing's straight. It's flawless. I don't understand this. So it might be a mistake with Carfax. But again, I'm not sure how much luck you're going to have going to Carfax and saying, show me your evidence. Because while they say, show me the Carfax, they never say, we'll show you ours. When it comes to asking us where the verification comes from. Carfax and the other competitors of Carfax, as you know, simply go around the nation and just vacuum up all this information. And they're probably picking up hundreds of thousands of pieces of information, probably daily, dumping it all in some gigantic database, and then just resorting it, resifting it, and then sending it out when people order it. So it makes sense that mistakes do get made in the process of their business, but the question is, how do you straighten that mistake out? So if you can get title history going all the way back, show that there is no salvage history to it, present it to Carfax, they should straighten it out. If you find that there is in fact a salvage history in there, and you didn't know this, you might want to ask yourself how it was that you didn't know this, but Carfax did. Now, ironically, I hate to admit this is good business for Carfax that this happens, because what Carfax would tell you when they say, oh, we picked up 6 years ago, this vehicle was rebuilt salvage, but you just picked it up now, is proof that you should have bought the Carfax report, or somebody should have, when you bought the car. And I've had people say, Steve, I'm looking at a vehicle. I've inspected it myself. I'm convinced it's clean. I can't see anything wrong with it. Why should I pay for the Carfax myself? If you're buying from an individual, for instance, or you're buying from a dealership that doesn't offer free Carfaxes. And this is one argument. There could be a mistake in the Carfax report, and that mistake goes with the car when you buy it. And for you to buy the car not knowing there's a mistake in the Carfax report and then having to fix it later will just make it harder for you. Now, I don't know what the odds are of that. I don't know if anybody's ever audited Carfax to find out how many mistakes they make. I don't know. But all I know is I've heard situations where it sounds to me like that's what happened. But, like I said, the only way to really prevent this would be to yank the Carfax report when you buy the vehicle, whether you like to or not. Take a look at it and make sure it shows it's clean. As to the odometer issue, if Carfax notified you that, hey, if somebody says you spun the odometer back a year ago, you're going to have to go back and figure out where that information came from. Was it from the oil change place? Was it from your shop, like your dealership service? Did they send in bad information? We've all heard the term fat-fingered. They may have fat-fingered in the wrong number, and now suddenly there's a mistake that shouldn't be there. And if you can figure that out, you should be able to get that straightened out also. But again, once in a while, I get these phone calls from people who say, Steve, I've been driving the car for years, and I just now learned that it's a salvage vehicle. I just now learned this, that, or the other thing. Well, if it's true, track it down, do the title history, spend the money, do the research, and find out where the information came from. And if it's true, find out if you have a legal remedy, call an attorney. And if it's false, appeal to Carfax and see if they'll fix it, because Carfax will do that, as will the other companies. So that's what you do when Carfax says you're driving a salvage vehicle. Again, thanks to the guys from Untitled Car Show for giving me the free t-shirt. Promised I'd wear it, and I did. Questions or comments, as always, shoot them my way, lehtoslaw.com. LEHTOSLAW.com. I'm on Twitter, at Steve Lehto, at STEVELEHTO. And this show is on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Podbean, Google Play, and YouTube. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.